Most parents tell their kids there's not monsters under the bed. These little girls lived in the house with the monster.
A gentleman came up to me and said, "My babies are in the house." And I asked him how many. He told me 3.
I remember seeing the firefighters coming out of the front door of the home, and the first fire came out. He was cradling a small child in his arms. He began to drop to one knee, and as he began to drop to one knee, the little girl's arm just fell limp right at her side, like a little rag doll.
I went back to the fire room looking for the children. At that time, Chief Fogg was in there, and he had already located the children, but they were both dead.
It was just being considered a house fire. The fire department had made their initial run through the house and started their investigation and started finding things that were questionable. And then they called me in.
He couldn't wait to get back down there because he thought maybe they had found out who had set this fire, who had done this, and then that's when he was arrested.
The 2-year-old went looking for Daddy, and the bottom of her feet were burnt because she went through the fire.
And
The bottom of his feet were not burned.
This, fire investigator, a day after the fire, determined that it was an arson, and so everything shifted at that point. The whole community shifted towards, from compassion to hostility.
I don't know how to explain it. After a while in this business, you get to judge people by their actions and their looks.
And they went in, they saw what they thought were indicators of arson, and it became an arson case. And the bias was on from there.
He said, when I came in here, the fire seemed to be burning over in that corner in the ceiling. Well, the children were found right by the hallway. So if he came into the room and actually saw that, I just don't see how he could not possibly get them out.
Willingham was a monster. This was a guy who murdered his 3 children.
He was an individual with essentially no redeeming values. They could hear the impact of him hitting his wife and his wife hitting the floor, and his statements to her that could be overheard throughout the neighborhood: "Don't get up, bitch, or I'll hit you again."
Frequently, the evidence is so damning, so overwhelming, that you can't come up with a way to interject reasonable doubt. This was one of those cases.
My fear was that they would try to use his prior juvenile history against him. In fact, they did ask me questions about his juvenile history, which later I wrote him a letter and I apologized, because I felt like in the end I'd actually caused him more harm than being able to help him.
And I looked at the judge and the DA and the jurors. And I told them then, I said, I hope that you will be able to live with the decision y'all have made for the rest of your life. Because y'all just messed up.
We presented a report saying that, this wasn't a crime at all. I even kind of thought that the governor might actually, at least give us 30 days to go back in and look at it. But it was just, the train had left the station and nobody was going to stop it.
I guess the question is, did Texas execute an innocent man? When I actually got the thing and looked at it, I said, ooh, he may not be a particularly nice guy, but this is really a railroad job. It became apparent that we were dealing with a fire which had gone to flashover, and had left natural patterns on the floor that all post-flashover fires tend to leave behind, and these had been misidentified as pour patterns, and thus the fire had been labeled an arson.
He came up with this theory that flashover caused all this deep burning. Some of these experts wasn't there whenever I was there.
So you might not have wanted Todd Willingham for a neighbor, right? You might not have wanted your daughter to date a man like that. But it was very important to the prosecution to make him look worse than he was.
This was his crowning achievement as a psychopath, the murder of his 3 children. I've always thought that the children were merely an impediment to Todd Willingham's lifestyle.
He did stupid crap like steal bikes. I put him in jail, I think, on his 18th birthday because he had screwed up again. And I said, I have tried to save your ass, and now I'm going to put your ass in jail so you can't enjoy your 18th birthday. He might have been an adult who was a failure or certainly wasn't a success. But I think at some points, he felt he was a success. He came back to visit me, and I was an old judge then, and he said, I just wanted you to see pictures of my kids. Did you know it?
Our kids were 6 weeks apart. And, you know, I just remember the sound in his voice of fatherhood.
He changed their diapers and took care of them and did everything that they needed, and he made them a lot of macaroni and cheese.
The fire was a set fire. I don't have any problem with that. The man was executed.
You know, I've been criticized by some because I've said that, of course, I thought he was guilty. How stupid would you be, how incompetent would you be as a defense attorney if you just went in and swallowed the story the defendant gave you?
The thing that drives these cases is that initial fire investigation report and that fire investigator getting on the witness stand and saying, I know. I can tell because I've got 20 years experience in this. When he can't tell, and he doesn't know, and he doesn't have any evidence.
You know, I don't know that we'll ever know the real cause of that fire. What we do know is that it wasn't intentionally set. And what we do know is that everything that the state relied on to prove that it was intentionally set is basically just a bunch of junk science. I mean, it's nothing more than old wives' tales.